Hi everyone, it's Toby. Thank you for joining me today. Today's sketch is a really simple, really easy beginner sketch of a landscape. So yeah, normally I do urban sketches, but I also love natural landscapes. When we say beginner sketch, that makes us think really simple. Well, yes, simple to do, but actually the results are really impressive. The results will make you realize that you're an artist. Hiding within you, even if you don't believe it, there is an artist, and I'm sure that by the end of today's video that's what you'll feel too. If you want to join in with more of my teaching, I have a totally 100% free course you can join. There's a link below. It's called 10 Days of Sketching. There's also 2 more beginners videos linked in the comment I will pin below this video. So if you're looking for more beginner sketches, check out those videos. I'm sure they'll be fun. With that, let's jump into the video itself. So what are we using for today's sketch? Well, not much. I've got a pen. This happens to be a fountain pen, but you could use a fineliner. The only important bit is this has got waterproof ink in, and this technique that I'm using today works best with waterproof ink. If you want more details on the inks I like to use, check out my website. There's links in the description, and you'll find out all sorts about the inks. I've got blog posts about inks as well, so check that out. The other bit, we've got some brushes. So the brushes, I've got size 12, size 6 round, or you could just have one brush. Size 8 or 10 is really convenient, does everything brush for simple sketching. Then I've got colours. Again, look, loads of colours, 14 colours, but the exact colours, aren't important. Just the concepts and how we use them, and that's exactly what we'll talk about. The other bits, of course, you'll need some paper. I'm using a bit of A4 cold pressed watercolour paper. We need a little towel or some kitchen rolls, some water in a pot, and then you're good to go. So in our 5-step process, the first step is shapes. Now in this landscape, which is really sort of potentially, you might look at it and go, oh, that's a bit bland. Well, the way we're going to make it interesting is by pulling out the layers. So we're looking at different layers and the different shapes all at once. And you'll soon see very easily exactly what I mean by that. So if we look at our scene, you can see we've got the sky, we've got this kind of middle ground, we've got the foreground. Maybe then we can even separate out the middle ground into a couple of different grounds, different areas. And that's all I mean by different layers. So how does that actually work in practice? Well, what we're going to do, we're going to start in the sort of middle, because the middle is where a lot of our interest is. And what we can see in the middle is a series of shapes. And I'm looking at this row of trees going all the way across. So if we start on the left, we can find them. And what are trees? These trees especially are basically little circles, aren't they? Little sort of circles. And we can vary the height of them, and we can go up and down, but we're still basically giving them circular shapes, but circles with texture. Notice the circles aren't just smooth, are they? And eventually we get just to the right of the centre, and we get to something which breaks up those circles. We got this sort of triangle with a little rectangle on top, and then next to it we've got another triangle coming down, but then our circles basically continue. These ones are a bit smaller, but then we get to what is probably another layer forward. It's kind of like the midground but towards the front, and so we get these as big, slightly bolder circles. So I'm making my line a little firmer. In front of these we've got another layer, so that layer is a really long, basically a long rectangle, which is the hedge. And so I'm just going to bring that rectangle all the way across. Again, it's got texture, so I'm not just doing a flat rectangle, I'm bringing it all the way across, making it go up and down. And then in front of that we have the next layer. And that is this field and the hedge, and it's the foreground basically. And here, look, we've got perspective to deal with. But what we do is we look at our shape, give it that texture, and then we can just simplify it. So look, the way we get the perspective is instead of doing a rectangle, we kind of think about a triangle. And we get the texture coming again, and then it just gets bigger and bigger as it comes forward to us. Here, there's our circle. we can finish off this hedge here again with texture. And so hopefully now you're seeing everything is a shape and everything is also working in layers. The next clear layer is at the back. So we've got these sort of rolling hills, and look again, these hills got little shapes on top, and we can just suggest a few of those. Give it that texture, make it more interesting. And if we're getting clever and fancy, we can now look within this layer, we can start dividing it. We can start adding in these sort of circles for the trees coming towards us. That's one little bit. Then we've got other circles here for little trees in the background. And this can just be based in what's happening. It doesn't have to be an exact replica, especially for a landscape. It's more about the feel. Now, anything else in this stage? Well, one more thing, maybe we can find this little shape. We've got this triangular field, and we can find that by putting in some suggestions of grass. But that's it. So in stage one, in layer one, no, in stage one, I'm talking in layers as well now, aren't I? In stage one, what we've done is we've found the shapes and we've divided it by layer. And now that gives us a chance to have some fun with our colours. Now, with the colours, we're going to keep things simple. So we're going to primarily be using blue and yellow. With that, we're going to be able to make some greens and then some murky colours. And the other part of keeping things simple is to basically let the colours do the work. So I'm starting with a bigger brush, size 12 round brush, and I am adding that water in. Now I can take my blue and it's going to paint itself. Now this sky is quite timid, isn't it? So I'm not putting in a load of blue. Often I have a really bold blue sky. Instead, this sky's going to be quite expansive. It's going to go quite high, but it's going to be quite faint. We don't want it to overwhelm the rest of the image. Some of my murky colours can come in now as well to create that drama. So a little bit of moon glow, that is. You could use a Payne's grey. And I've also got a little bit of sepia. That's this sort of browny colour. And now we've got this timid but dramatic sky. And maybe just want a couple more splashes of blue. But that's it. That's all we need to do. Now coming forward, it's important to leave white. It's important to leave white. So I'm going to identify shapes for colour, not splash colour everywhere. So the next place I'm going to come is just the layer forward. And we've got these shapes. So let's just identify that these shapes are going to get some colour. All I'm doing, mixing my blue and my green, and just gently, loosely applying colour to these areas. Doesn't matter if the colour goes outside the shapes, doesn't matter if it doesn't go into all of the shapes. In fact, it's better that way. What we just want is some lovely loose shapes. Again, a bit of our murky, drama-y colours just popped in there. And look, it's a bit too much water, isn't it? So I'm going to dry my brush off and we can pick up some of that water. And we can, again, just do a little bit of splashing, a bit of randomness, and then we can come forward. As we come forward, we want these colours to be more intense. That's the kind of atmospheric perspective, is that the closer you are, the more saturated the colours are. Now in the reference, everything's a bit sort of dry and murky, isn't it? Murky is probably the wrong word, but it's a bit dark. Well, let's add a little bit more life, but let's also play to that. Let's also make sure that we get that feeling of darkness. So I'm adding some moon glow into my otherwise sort of lovely light colours. My house, I almost painted green. It's very easy when we're doing this to make silly mistakes like that, but it's fine. I didn't. And what I want is that house to be another area of negative space. Now, having done that, we can come back in with our brush, clean it off, dry it off, and move things around. Push things around. Get these colours gentle rather than overwhelming. They will, of course, dry gently, but we can start off nice and gently as well. And look, I accidentally picked up some red on my brush. That's fine. We can pull it away and keep going. I'm going to get this colour down into this hedge as well. Gently wash it through. And as we come forward, I'm going to take away that grumpiness. I'm going to get a bit more of our green back. And again, so what I'm doing is I'm picking out shapes to add this gentle colour to. Now, we've got a lot of colour going on now and a lot of space. And we need to just make sure we get that balance right. So one more thing I'm sort of quite interested in adding is a bit more yellow, a bit more happiness, a bit more brightness. And we can do that into these fields. And then if we bring it all the way over, look, we can mingle things. So we just let these colours over here mingle and merge. And then we'll end up with this kind of lovely, natural feeling landscape instead of something that's manufactured, that's sort of painted on hard. Now another nice touch is to use just these blues from the sky just in some of these darker areas, and it will just lift it. You know, we've already got that blue in this green. It's not like we're doing something insane. We've already mixed that blue into the green, so just let that blue have a play on its own and just see what effects it produces. Another bit of fun, just lift up a couple of bits, come in with a drop of water and see what that does for your textures. And before long, we need to sort of think about just moving on and letting this dry and see what happens. So that's what I'm going to do now. Let this first wash of colour dry and we will see what happens when it is nice and dry. So we're back and our colours are dry. And what we're going to do, we're going to just add a little bit more of that je ne sais quoi, a bit more depth to our colours. Now what we don't want to do is overdo the background and then make the background come too far forward. So we might even totally leave the back layer, the sky, for definite. We might just leave this sort of next layer forward and see what happens if we just deepen these other colours. So remember, we've got our mix. It's just a bit of blue, a bit of yellow. And then for these, we added in a bit of grumpy colour, a bit of moon glow. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest a sort of source of light. So I'm going to suggest by adding shadows to this side that there's light coming down. And that's just going to make the scene a bit more interesting. It's going to make the scene feel like it's got, well, a lot more light, like it's got a lot more shape, a lot more drama. We can also mix it up. We can get some more yellows in a couple of places. We can suggest little textures. We can make it quite sketchy in that we produce little slightly abstract circles like this in a few places. Again, that's kind of now taking this beyond reproducing the scene towards reproducing the scene and showing people our process, showing that we are artists at the same time. Here we want nice and dark and bold colours. And then we can, again, why not add in a bit more yellow in a couple of places. Again, I want this hedge is quite dark, isn't it? So I want it to be nice and dark coming across. And we come in and we soften, just add a little bit more sort of softness to some of these edges. Keep some of these fun little textures, and some of them will soften out. And now we have this flowing dark into light. Coming forward, let's get more of that mix, and we just do the same things. We get that light into dark and start doing some lines suggesting the kind of angle. This is a hedge, right? So it's upright. At the moment we can't tell if it's flopped over or we can't really tell much about it. Just a few little suggestions, and before you know it, we've got an upright hedge. Even further forward, we've got this, which we left in our last wash, but now we can come and go, you know what, let's produce some really big grass. Same here, in our lovely yellow field, we can use a bit of yellow, a bit of our mixed green, and again, just produce some more of these lovely textures. What always works nicely in natural stuff is a bit of splashing as well, because that suggests the sort of natural flow that you do get in these landscapes. In the sky, maybe a couple more blues, maybe this same blue again, to really lift some of these shadows. I actually did a video about using blue in shadows recently, so you might want to check that out. And I'll try and remember to link that in the comment below as well, so you can have a look at it. And there we go, that is it. That is our step 3 done. And again, we want to just wait for this to dry, And now we'll be coming back in with our ink to do a few little touches. And there we are, almost dry. So it's time to what I call restructure our image. And what I mean by that, look, where these shapes have been lost a little bit, we can come and just find those lines again. It's important to be gentle, not overdo it, because we don't want this scene to become too bold and too illustrative. But what we're just trying to do is lift things forward. And this comes back to layers as well. So with layering, the darker the line, the further forward something will feel. So if I darkened all these lines, it would feel like everything had jumped forward and it would lose that layering effect. Instead, if I darken these lines, what we'll get is this bit coming forward. Equally, we can use lines, dark lines, to isolate subjects. So this house can be isolated by a simple dark line. This, again, this is both going to come forward and isolate it by sort of eliminating it from these blues, eliminating it from this negative space. Along here, we want a really bold line potentially, but very textured and maybe broken up to really show, these textures we've got in the watercolour. We can reproduce them with little lines and loops, just showing this is a natural object. It's not a green wall, it's a wall of green, it's a hedge. Same here, just suggest a few more of these bits of grass, and in here we can just underline and come in and play with some of these areas. And that's it, that's the restructuring done, and that took next to no time, and that's the wonderful thing about landscapes, it's so easy to do that. And we can immediately move on to the final step. The final step is where we add those finishing touches. Now for me, that's often bold colours or bits of contrast. Now I think something fun here will be to bring in some more contrast. So we can go back to our horizon line and look at these little trees. Let's just make a little feature, why not? We'll just pick them out, and that separates out the landscape from everything else. Another thing which can be fun to do is to separate things out with simple hatching. So look, this is in the distance, so we could simply, to separate it out as a layer, and we could have done this earlier, but we can also do it now, and just do some really simple hatching. And that will now separate out this distant layer from this light layer as well. Equally, if we wanted to, we could turn this whole bit into one layer. So let's do that. So to do that, we just continue that hatching. And now that hatching unifies the whole of this midground, and it separates it out really nicely from this house, which is even better because it simplifies our image a little bit more. Is there anything else we might want to do? Well, I'm actually happy to leave it there, but for the sake of argument, what we could do, we could take some really bold colours and we could do some really bold flecks and textures. Get some yellow grass in here, little suggestions maybe of flowers in the grass or just textures. We get some really bold greens and blues and touch them into our bushes and hedges back here. But what we don't want to do, we don't want to overdo it. So actually, after a couple more touches, just to balance out the touches I've already done, I'm going to leave it. And that is that sketch done. Don't forget to finish it off, pop your initials in there. Now, if you enjoyed this, check out the other videos I've linked in my comment below, which look at the same ideas, the same 5-step process where we find shapes and then we just make it our own and we have a lot of fun. So check out those videos, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in a moment on the next video. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.